Okay.
So inshallah, we'll start the program. I just want to introduce Brother Wissam Ajara, who is the Vice President with the University of Islamic Finance for the last 14 years. And he has been going to different masajids for his seminars to inform the community and society how to buy houses or cars for the halal way without interest, without the conventional mortgage, or rather for the University of Islamic Finance, which is Islamic financing options. And then we have Brother Samir Farmaz, who's with
Saturna Amana Mutual Funds.
Amana Mutual Funds for the last
I've been with them for 3 years.
3 years.
And then prior to that, I was with JP Morgan for 11 years.
So you'll be telling us afterwards about investments, how to invest our money in halal mutual funds or halal investment places, inshallah. So without further ado, I pass the word to you.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulullah. Jazakallah khair, all of you for your time. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for the kind introduction, the masjid and the board for allowing us to be here. Inshallah, we will do really a general overview on Islamic home financing and to explain to you how it works and then how UIF works in particularly. Now, inshallah, we'll answer questions towards the end so that this way we can, with the bad weather out there, not keep you too long, inshallah, but give you short but detailed information as well. So to get into it, some of you may have heard of UIF and others may have not. UIF stands for University Islamic Financial. We have Muslim investors. We are also a subsidiary of a community bank based in Michigan. We've been operational for over 17 years. I've been with the company for over 14 years. We've done over 5,000 homes in terms of financing. We have done nearly $3 billion at this point in residential home financing. On any given day, we have around $35 million or so in deposit accounts, and we've done over $50 million in commercial real estate financing, including masjid financing. So that gives you a little bit of a history. Alhamdulillah, we've been doing this for quite a while, and we've gotten a tremendous amount of experience under our belt. The states that you see highlighted are the states that we are operational in. And it's very important to know which states and why, and we'll go through that in the next slide. But as you can see, the states are about 26 states in total, and every year we grow in the states that we offer our product in. Now, to get into the oh, let me move this over a bit because I'm a bit on the way. There we go. Okay. Is that better? Okay. I think we skipped the slide. Let's see if we can go back. Okay, so to go over the different entities that are involved in the transaction. As you know, first and foremost, the product that we offer is a faith-based product, and so we need to make sure that it's Sharia compliant. So we do have an independent Sharia supervisory board that has reviewed and approved the program. So that's first and foremost. Second, we live in a country that the finance industry is very heavily regulated. So we have to make sure that our product works within the federal guidelines. And then we have to work, obviously, in each state. Each state has their own rules and regulations. And that is why you see that we're operational in 26 states and not all 50 states. If we had a traditional interest-bearing contract, then we would be, operational kind of overnight in all 50 states. But because our contracts are written differently, we have to make sure that they work within each state's guidelines. Then we have to work with the sellers, the attorneys, title companies, and our investors as well. So alhamdulillah, we've been able to streamline the process to make sure that we're able to help a person finance their home usually within 30 days or so, even going through these different parties involved in a financial transaction. But to get into the matter of what is the difference from Islamic finance perspective and a traditional, right? Not to go into complete detail, I'll give you a Friday khutbah, you had that earlier today, but in Islam you cannot buy and sell money, okay? You cannot buy and sell money, but you can lend money, right? Lending money in Islam is encouraged if it's helping somebody out, but not through profiting off of it. So if a brother needs $1,000 for a reason, he comes and asks, brother, do you have $1,000 to lend me? I say, sure, here's $1,000, and you give me $1,000 back on, a month from now, a year from now, whatever the case is. So it's $1,000 I've lent you to help you, and you're paying me back in $1,000, not more than that. So you can't profit from it. But you can also make a profit Islamically from buying and selling a physical asset. As we all know, the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a tradesman. He would buy and sell items with Khadija radiallahu anha as well. So buying and selling a physical asset is halal, and that's how you can make a profit Islamically. And I will go through more details on that, but that's a general concept. Before we get into the different products, here is our Sharia Supervisory Board. As Sheikh Jawad introduced me, my name is Wissam Barjawi. There's no titles left out. There's no Sheikh, there's no Mufti or anything like that. And so we need to make sure that the product is approved by a group of scholars that are reputable, right? And so here are some of the names that you may know. You have Mufti Abdullah Nana, is on our Sharia Supervisory Board, Sheikh Nizam Yaqubi. You have the late Professor Sheikh Hassan Hamid and Abdul Bari Mash'al are on our Sharia Supervisory Board. And you do have many other imams that either have reviewed our program or have used our program for their own home. You have Imam Muhammad Majid, Imam Zaid Shakir, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, Sheikh Omar Soliman, Imam Tahir Anwar. And if you go on our website, myuif.com, you'll see a greater extensive list of sheikhs as well as testimonials as well. The reason why we want to highlight this part is to give you a comfort level on the product that we offer. It's very important that we have a broad base of scholars that have either reviewed and approved the program or use it themselves. Now, how a bank works, right? How to distinguish halal from haram is important. Now, first, the conventional bank. How does it work? Conventional bank works by buying money. It needs to receive money from the public. So what does it do? Let's say, for example, John goes into the bank and says, I'm going to deposit $10,000. The bank says, okay, we will take your $10,000 and we are going to give you, let's say, a 2% profit or interest on the money that you have given us. Now this 2% goes to John and the bank is holding $10,000. Now Frank comes in and says, hey, I need $10,000 because I want to open up a hot dog stand. So the bank says, sure, Frank, here, we're going to give you the $10,000, but you have to pay us 5% interest on this money that we're lending you. So now it is selling the money to Frank. It is paying John 2% to keep the money, and it's giving it out to Frank for 5%. And the difference between the two, the interest spread is what it's called. That is the profit that the bank makes, and that is how the bank makes money and buys and sells money. It doesn't care about the hot dog stand, it doesn't care about the business or the house or what you're quite frankly doing with it. They just want their money back with interest, right? So it's important to know that buying and selling money is how a bank operates. Now, Islamically speaking, as we briefly talked about, Islamically, you can buy and sell a physical asset, okay? And there are some details to it, but generally speaking, if the asset is halal and two parties agree on the price, then it is a halal transaction. Let's say this sweater or this jacket is $100, and you want to purchase it, and I'm selling it to you for $100, and we agree on it, and it's a fair price, and that there's no unknown defects with it, there's no holes in the pockets and things of that sort, then in that case it's a halal transaction. Where this becomes an unhalal transaction is, let's say you've come up from Florida and you weren't sure how the weather was, and it's very cold. And I know that you're traveling, so instead of $100, I'm going to sell it to you for $200. Even though you might accept it, it's still not a really fair transaction because I'm taking advantage of you and your circumstances. Or another way that I think we all fail to do this, so we do this often, I should say, is we haggle too much. Right? This is not from the sunnah to haggle to the part where the person just gives up and says, I don't want it anymore, right? And such. You say, oh, I'll give you $90, and the brother says, I'll give you 95, and finally he says, just take it so that you could leave. This is not from the sunnah either, right? The sunnah is both sides are happy with the transaction. But generally speaking, buying and selling a physical asset that both agree upon, and that profit then becomes halal for that. Now, Islamically speaking, here in the United States, the scholars have come up with three main modes of financing real estate. Now, if I ask you, how does Islamic finance work? Usually people give me a mix of different ways, or all three of these combined into one, right? Because we have a little bit of preconceived notion of how it works, but there are three different models. Depending on which model you use, there's a different entity that owns the property. So depending on who owns the property, there are different rights, responsibilities, and liabilities. Okay? So in the first model, the Musharraka model. Musharraka model is a marked up installment sales contract. What does that mean? Let's say the house costs $100,000. Okay? We are going to purchase the home for $100,000, and then we are going to resell it to you for $120,000, for example, and then break up the payment equally over a period of time. So when we transfer the home to you at the time of closing, you are 100% owner of the property. You are just paying us back in installments. Similar to, let's say, for example, if you were to purchase a phone from Best Buy, let's say an Apple phone that costs $1,000 from Best Buy. They will sell you the phone today. You will own the phone today, but you will pay them back in installments $50 a month. If you drop the phone and crack the screen, you're still responsible to pay them the $1,000. Or if you sell it on eBay for $1,500, you keep that $500 and you pay them the $1,000. That's an installment contract. Similarly, that's how the Musharraka model works. It's a marked up installment contract. The second model is called Ajara, which is a lease to own. In this case, the financing company owns the property and sells it back to you for the same price that you paid for it. Let's say it's $100,000. But while you are paying them back that $100,000, you are going to be using that home, and you are going to pay them a rent for using that house. Once you have enough money saved up, that full $100,000, then the ownership gets transferred to you. Up until that time, you do not own the property. Lastly is the Musharraka model. And the Musharraka model is a partnership model where two entities co-own the home together. So let's say, for example, UIF purchases the home with you. Okay, so we'll go through this in a little bit more detail in this slide, since this is the main model that UIF focuses. We do offer all three models, but we focus primarily on the partnership model because it allows more flexibility from a Sharia perspective of buying and selling ownership. First and foremost is you come to us to get approved or pre-qualified. When you call us to get pre-qualified, we establish a relationship with you. We give you an approval letter, and in that approval letter, it tells you that you now have permission to act as an agent on our behalf to look for the home, negotiate the price of the home. And then at the time of closing, we will purchase the home together 100%. So let's say, for example, you put in 10%, UIF will put in the other 90%, and together we will co-own the home 100%. Right? So it's a partnership agreement that we have with you. Together, we will co-own it with your name and UIF as co-owners in the property. Now, with that, we will then have it together, but your intention is not for us to co-own the property forever, right? Your intention is to gain ownership over time. So in this co-ownership agreement, you're going to make a payment. Part of your payment is going to go towards buying out our 90% share. So next month, your share goes up from 10% to 11%, 15, 20, 25, 60, 80, until you become 100% owner of the property. And every month, our share of the property goes down. Now, while you have your monthly payment, part of it goes towards buying out the share of the property, and part of it goes towards the rent or the profit that we make. See, in the example I had given, that 90% of the home we co-own with you, you are still going to use the house 100%. So you're going to pay us a rent or profit for using our share of the property until you become 100% owner of the property. So this is how the partnership model works. And so I wanted to give you an example. If you compare our payment model, the payments, and a traditional mortgage, you're going to wind up with a house and you're going to be paying about similar amounts. The difference is not the end outcome, but the difference is how we got there, the process. And so this ayah in the Quran highlights that you may have the same outcome, but how you got there is important from a halal perspective, right? In Surah Al-Baqarah, they say trade is but a kind of riba, but Allah has made trade lawful and riba unlawful, right? Both cases, there's a profit. You pay interest, you pay a profit to us for using the home. The amounts are going to be similar, but one is halal and one is not, based on the relationship of how we got there. And this concept of the process is important, is not just towards home financing, but to many aspects of our life, right? Whether it's relationships, marriage relationships, whether it's in trade transactions. For example, I was traveling once and I had purchased some bracelets for my daughters. I came home and the bracelets were too small. So I went to the jewelry store to sell them and to purchase another bracelet that would fit them. When I got there, the lady told me I will give you $800. I'm sorry, I'd give you $1,000 for the bracelets. And then I found a set of bracelets that I liked, and they cost $800. So generally, when you go to the store, they say, okay, you're returning $1,000 and you're purchasing $800. Here's $200 back, right? And then I get the bracelets. But what they did is that they said, no, you're selling us the bracelets for $1,000. Here's the receipt, and here's the $1,000. And now we're going to ring you up for a separate transaction for purchasing the bracelets for $800. Here's the receipt, and I paid her the $800, and I was left with $200 back. Same outcome. At the end, I still had the bracelet that had the $200, but I had to do two separate steps because the process is what's important as well. Now, part of the home buying process is usually a 5-step process. One is to get pre-qualified. Give us a call so we can ask you some basic questions to see how much you qualify for, explain to you the program, what are the guidelines, what to expect. We give you a pre-qualification letter. You use this letter to shop around for a home with a real estate agent. Once the agent negotiates a price on your behalf and you have a signed sales contract, you come back to us and we continue the process to get you an approval, complete approval on that home, and then eventually to close on that property. The total process currently takes around 30 to 45 days, depending on the customer's proactiveness in getting us the documents that we need. But alhamdulillah, we do our best to streamline the process as much as possible. Now, many of you may ask, how do I qualify, right? If I want to purchase a home, so you can purchase a home whether to live in, to rent it out, or a second home or vacation home. But we look for 3 main things. One is that your monthly income. What is your income? And so generally speaking, if you have no liabilities, no car loan, student loan, credit card debt, then for every $20,000 to $25,000 of income that you show on your tax return, then you would qualify for about $100,000 in financing. Then we look at your credit to see what is your history of making your past obligations, keeping up with them. And then lastly, we look for a down payment. Your down payment can be as low as 3 to 5%. So those are the three main guidelines that we look for in terms of qualifying. And as I wrap up, because we just wanted to condense this presentation as well to give you a general overview, our UIF promise to you is to first and foremost offer you a strict Sharia compliant program that you can rest assured that you're purchasing a home in a halal way. Secondly, but also important, is to be as competitive as possible and to be the lowest cost provider in the Islamic finance industry. And last but not least is to handhold you throughout the process to make it as smooth as possible. I know that when purchasing a home, everyone's very excited. The wife, the kids, the moving, the boxes, and all of that. And you have your normal life as well. And so we try to streamline it as much as possible and handhold you through the process on what to expect. Here are some of the, alhamdulillah, the awards that we've received for our service and voted on also by the community. We have, as I like to joke around, Sheikh Google and our reviews from third-party and customers like you who've used our services as well to let us know if we're doing well. And alhamdulillah, it's one of the things that we pride ourselves on. If you go on more recent Google reviews, you'll see even better reviews as well. And if you, inshallah, would like to get a hold of us, please reach out to us at info@myuif or visit our website, myuif.com, inshallah. So with that, jazakallah khair for your time, and inshallah, we will now go ahead and I will take questions, a few questions, while Brother Samir from Saturna Capital will get set up, inshallah, in the meantime, and go from there. See if there's any questions from the brother side.
I would like to know if you finance anything other than homes, like cars or businesses.
Sure. So the question that the brother has, I'll just repeat it so everyone can hear.
1 second. Can you also announce that people who are watching online, they can post their question?
Well, yes. So any viewers online, if you have any questions, please write your questions in the chat box, and inshallah, I will do my best to address those questions as well. So the brother's question was, do we offer any other financing besides homes right now? So yes, we do. We do commercial real estate financing, which is if you needed a shopping center, medical office, a masjid, Islamic school. So real estate, yes, we do offer commercial real estate financing currently, and we are working on other products soon. We will be announcing some other products to come as well. Stay tuned very soon to offer some other means of financing. As we continue to grow, we look to expand to other products as well. But as of today, those are the two products. In the next few months, we hope to offer other products as well.
You mentioned partnership.
Mm-hmm.
Is that partnership based on the money you bring in? So you said 10% versus 90%. If I'm buying a house and I bring in 40% of down payment, then are we 40-60 partner? And is that partnership as we keep paying on monthly or yearly basis? Does that reflect in the paperwork? How does that work?
So the partnership is a limited partnership based on the real estate transaction, and yes, it on the documents. So the brother's question was, is that does the ownership reflect in the documents and in the partnership?
Based on the down payment.
Based on the initial down payment. So if you, let's say that the down payment was 40%, as you mentioned, does that reflect anywhere? And the answer is yes. So you would start off with 40% ownership in the property, and then every month, once you make your payment, your ownership will go up from that point. And depending on how much it goes up will depend on what terms do we have with you. So we do have different terms, 10 years, 15, 20, and 30-year terms. Obviously, the shorter term, you'll gain faster ownership in the property as well. So everything is based on also the co-ownership agreement that we have with you. And we don't have in any way, shape, or form any interest promissory note that you will sign. Some companies will tell you we offer Sharia compliant financing, and they'll give you 2 sets of documents. With us, there's only just that one, that partnership agreement.
And one more question, do you guys acquisition investments? So if I want to acquire a business or something like that, do you guys also do some investments from that perspective?
We don't do business financing currently. We do just real estate at the moment.
But he showed commercial financing.
Commercial real estate. So real estate buildings, shopping centers, medical offices,
Restaurants.
Restaurant, the building itself, but not the actual equipment yet. We are looking into, hopefully, inshallah, one day offering equipment financing, auto financing, and so on. That will, inshallah, it's on, the scope of what we're looking to expand upon, inshallah. And we have a robust team that's in our product development that's, really actively trying to do all that we can to be a full service for the community. Yes, brother.
I'm just curious, what is the requirement for budget financing when you finance a masjid?
So we do have a commercial
Just
department.
repeat the question.
Yes, I'm sorry, Chef. You're absolutely right. So the question the brother had was that what are the requirements for the commercial financing? So I focus on residential financing. We do have a commercial department that I would like to defer you over to, but you will have to put, I believe, don't quote me on this, anywhere from 30 to 40% down on a commercial transaction, and we'll use a similar partnership model.
Yeah, just to clarify, I was asking about masjid.
Masjid. Masjid, yes. So it would be a masjid will fall under the commercial.
Oh, that falls in the commercial.
Yes, it will. So we have a commercial department that I would guide you over to for that, inshallah. I can give you their information so that they can give you their particular guidelines for that. It's slightly different than the residential, and I'm not up to speed on that, to be honest with you. But we do commercial masjid. I know, alhamdulillah, we just closed on a masjid, I think, yesterday.
New Jersey?
In New Jersey, yes. So, alhamdulillah. So, if we could be of any help, let us know. We've done Islamic schools in New Jersey as well. So, alhamdulillah.
There's a question online.
Yes, online question.
They're asking, what is the difference between the interest rate and the profit? You mentioned profit, and so they're asking the difference between interest rate and profit.
So the example I had given between interest and profit, when I was referring to interest, I was giving the example of the commercial bank, how it makes a profit through lending of money and buying and selling money, right? So from that, we at UIF and Islamic finance in general does not make a profit through lending money, but it is through purchasing a physical asset, owning that asset, and then whether it's selling it to you at a higher price or you paying a usage or rent for using that physical asset. So the difference is that how are you making a profit, whether it's lending money or something of a physical asset that you can really touch and feel and has some intrinsic value to it. So that is really the difference between the two, is the relationship that we have with you. Instead of lending you money, it is a business transaction of ownership of a physical property. Inshallah. Any last questions? If not, inshallah, Brother Samir will have his wonderful presentation on Islamic investing. So inshallah, without further ado.
One quick question, sorry.
Yes.
So in the 3 models that you mentioned, the second one I believe was called Ajara.
Yes.
And that was like a rent model. And then the third one was a partnership model.
Yes.
So what are the exact differences between the renting model and the partnership model? Because it seems like in both you're paying, the person who is getting the house is still paying a rent.
Sure. So it's a very good question. The brother's question is, what is the difference between the Ajara model and the Musharraka model or partnership model? Ajara is lease to own. Musharraka is partnership. They are very similar, but there are some big differences as well. So in both cases, there is a profit that's paid for using the home, a rent. The main difference is the ownership in the property, okay? In the Ajara model, the financing company owns the property 100%. You don't own it. You own it once you have that last payment in. So if the house is $100,000, they're gonna sell it to you for $100,000. And it's kind of like layaway. You're gonna make a monthly payment, but part of your payment is going to go for that 100,000, but it's on the side. It's like savings. So now once you've had 100,000 saved up, they will transfer ownership to you. Before that time, your name is nowhere on it as owning the property. It's so-and-so owns the property and such. So-and-so is going to pay the property taxes for you because so-and-so owns the property. Partnership model, your name is on the deed of the property, that you own the property. And you have real ownership in that property right away. Right? And so you have more rights in that property because you're really an owner in it. Whereas the other one, you're a beneficiary of the property once you make all of the payments. So that's really the difference between the two. And that's why I like to say 3 models. Each model has its own rights and responsibilities differently from a Sharia perspective, because who owns the model? That owns the property. In the Murabaha, you own the property 100%, you're paying back in installments. The Ajara model, the financing company owns it 100%. And the last model, the partnership, it's a co-ownership. You both co-own it depending on who puts how much as a down payment.
One more question online. She's asking, how do you calculate the profit rate?
Sure, that's an excellent question. How do you calculate the profit rate? And what we do is we look for a return for our investment into the home. Let's say if we're looking for a 3% or 4% return on our investment into the home, and that is what we use to calculate the markup annually. Okay, and we like to be competitive to the market, right? Because fortunately or unfortunately, I like to say everybody's Sharia compliant until it costs $1 more, right? And then every fatwa comes up and brother this, brother that, and such, right? So we want to be as competitive as possible in the mortgage industry, but also know that we have our own product as well to offer halal financing as well. So we're not more expensive than the traditional, but we're still offering you a product that fits your religious needs. Inshallah. Brother Samir, without further ado, inshallah. Thank you so much.
MashaAllah, very good. Jazakallah khair. Takbir.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thanks for having me. Thank you, Brother Imam Jawad and Wassam for inviting me. We tend to do these events together because we're always on the topic of Islamic finance. So he handles, I know Brother Jawad was asking what's the difference between you guys. So he'll help you finance your home in an Islamic Sharia compliant way. We'll help you invest your money in an Islamic and Sharia compliant way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, due to the interest of time, I'm going to just kind of go through it real quick. But I will take Q&A afterwards because there's a lot of questions that come up about this. So again, my name is Samir Sarmast. I've been with Saturna Capital for 3 years now. Prior to that, was with JP Morgan for 11 years. I was a private client advisor. I was a vice president there, and managed high net worth individuals. And then eventually I decided it was time to move into the Islamic side of things. So I have a lot of experience. Prior to that, I was with Wachovia Bank for 4 years, which is now Wells Fargo. So been in the industry over 17 years in finance, Islamic finance, the last 3 years. So why do people invest? I mean, you have some ideas here. Buying a home, right? You may be saving up for a down payment and then financing the rest through Wissam here. Hajj, right? Hajj is getting expensive. Who knows what the cost is now after coronavirus. Children's education, right? Year over year, college is going up. The price of going to school is going up. And of course, retirement, saving for the days when you're sitting at home and not working anymore. And then healthcare costs also, right? So these are some ideas. And you might have your own idea. You might have a goal that you're working towards. So what are some of the goals of investing? Okay, capital growth, right? Capital growth means, you're putting your money away and you want it to grow and naturally appreciate over time. Preservation of capital. Well, you want to also preserve the capital, meaning who's heard of inflation, right? Okay, so inflation now is higher than ever, right? So we were calculating around a 2% inflation rate. Now, if we look at it, it might be double or more, right? Depending on what industry or what item you're trying to buy. Try buying a car right now, you're not getting a discount, right? You're paying over sticker. That's an example of inflation, and that's due to the coronavirus and the supply being low, right, and the demand being high. And then income. Income is, you're in retirement, let's use that as an example, and you need to pay your bills. Aside from Social Security and whatever else you have saved up, investing can help you generate a form of income that could help you pay your bills. So these are some goals of investing, right? These are some bullet points, habits of successful investors. Investing for the long term, they're not sitting there trying to time the markets. They start early in their life, not later. You don't want to be 3 years from retirement and have a wake-up call and say, hey, I don't have any money. The people who save early and often are the ones who win in the long run. Diversify. Diversify means don't put all your eggs in one basket. You may heard that term. You got to diversify. You have to do asset allocation. So what that means is you're not putting everything into the one stock or the one fund or the one this or one that. You're diversifying. Okay. Don't try to time the market. You may hear your friends, some of the young folks here. Oh, bro, I'm going to get in right now, man. I'm going to make so much money in 2 days. But that's really not the way to invest successfully. If you're lucky, I mean, the smartest people out in the finance industry, even they have trouble timing the markets, right? Because no one can predict the future. We don't have a crystal ball to say, hey, this is what's happening tomorrow. If we had that, I don't think I'd be up here on a Friday night talking to you. So also, appreciate the impact of fees and costs. You got to understand that, there are a lot of investments out there. You got to compare it, like the brother said, there might be premiums for certain things, that might be worth it. And other things, you just got to shop around and get the best deal. Understand your emotional biases. Again, a lot of people invest with their heart, right? So recently when the virus started, the market started going down. I had a lot of clients shifted out of their investment, but what happened? Only 3 days later, or not 3 days, but 3 months later, everything starts going back up. And then what are they doing? Oh, brother, I think it's gonna tank again. We haven't seen the bottom yet, but it just goes up 60%. Then they've lost that. So that's another example. It's emotional, but also you're not thinking long term. You're thinking short term, right? Understand volatility, which is what that example is. It goes up and down. How many of you have been on a roller coaster? Did you go to Muslim Day? And they come up, yeah? Okay, you've been on the roller, you want a nitro? What's the purpose of a roller coaster? To scare the crap out of you, right? Like it goes up and down, up and down. That's what happens with the market. Volatility goes up and down. And you get scared and you make emotional, rash decisions, which may or may not be good for you. So you've got to distinguish good companies and good investments, which alhamdulillah, at Saturna or within the amount of funds, that's what we strive to do, okay? And we'll get into that. Understand the value is driven by cash flow, and then take advantage of 401k plans. And we'll get into that because I got a lot of questions of how do we invest in a halal way in 401k plan. So, do we need to hear about investing for college, anybody? Yeah. Okay, all right, so we'll get into this, okay? So just a couple facts here. Public college costs rose an average of 1.6% beyond inflation. Tuition ranges are anywhere from roughly $11,000 to about $38,000 per year. Okay, that comes from trends.collegeboard.org. That's where we get that from. Right here, it demonstrates from since the 90s to now what a 4-year college tuition has gone up, or the 2-year, or a nonprofit, like a private one, like an Ivy League one, right? So you can see that it's doubled pretty much from the beginning of time. When I went to Rutgers, and that was early 2000s, right? Around 9/11 to 2004. I was paying $6,000 a year flat rate, right? 12 credits, unlimited, and then minimum 12 credits. You take 18 credits, you get 21. It was $6,000 flat rate. Now, I don't know if some of you brothers what the tuition is, but I know my sister, my youngest sister, who was the last person to graduate college, it was around 20 grand when she went, and that was about 10 years ago. So the whole point of the slide is to show you that costs have increased and how are we going to pay for this, right? And then this is the average, the debt that people end up in. You know, the average debt that people have when they come out of college. That's a big issue, right? Nowadays, people are questioning whether or not to go to college or play around with Bitcoin or whatever other projects are out there. So there's various alternatives. We mentioned state-sponsored 529 plans. The only issue with this is they're probably not going to be halal 100% Sharia compliant because they sort of like 401ks. They give you a menu of options. Most of them are age-based. So let's say you put your money in and you're 2 years old or your child's 2 years old. As they go on, the allocation shifts. The issue is they'll have some fixed income or bonds in there, which is 100% riba. So that's what would make it un-Islamic. Aside from that, you don't know what they're investing in. They could be investing into banks, financials, right? So we'll get into a little more about the screens, but the only reason we mention this is because people will say, well, what about 529 plans? So let's get it out the way and talk about it. But if you were to invest into it, you could do up to $15,000 a year, maximum, okay? And it will grow without any taxes, and then when you use it, when you take it out, use it for college, it comes out tax-free. And it says few have halal choices. So unless you find that perfect one, then you know. But we mentioned it. So what's the alternative? You could do an education savings account, which is also known as a covered account. Okay. So the only I would say that the hindrance here is there's a income limit on this as well. Meaning if you make a certain amount, if you make over that, you can't contribute into this. So right here it says, you know, if you and your wife are working and making 190,000, beyond that, you can't invest into this, or you can't open this kind of account. The other downside is $2,000 per year. Well, maybe for some people it might be okay, but $2,000 a year, depending on when you start, may not be a lot of money to pay for even 1 year of college, right? So those are things. There are other alternatives around this. You use a Roth IRA for your child, open a Roth IRA, and do up to $6,000 for your kid. So 2,000 plus 6,000, there's a way of doing 8,000, per year. But I'm not going to get too much into that. And then the other option is if you can't qualify for that account, you can't do an ESA, you can do a custodial account. How many of you have opened a custodial account for your child at the bank or have one, right? So when I was a young kid, my parents had a custodial, a minor's account. It's also called a minor's account. And then when I turned 18 or 21, whatever the legal age is in your state, and I don't know what it is here, but 18, let's just say, it gets, that money becomes the child's money, okay? So same way with this, you can open a custodial account for a child and then do up to 15,000 per child, 30,000 for a couple, and then have it say that they can use the money for whatever. It doesn't have to be for college. It could be, they want to start a business or buy a car or something like that. So it has more flexibility. There's no real tax advantages to this, except for that when the money comes out, it gets taxed at the child's rate, which is called a kiddie tax. It won't be it wouldn't be taxed at the adults or the parents' tax rate. So that's the only advantage. There's no tax, other than that, there's no real benefit to that. Over here, it says college planning gets started early, right? So what does this mean? It means that the earlier you start, the better it's going to be. So this is saying that with the cost of a fancy coffee now, I was drinking Dunkin' Donuts, that was $2, but let's say you're drinking Starbucks fancy coffee, that's double, right? So say about $4 or $5 a day. If you started saving that, let's say your child was 3 years old, that money will grow. And when that child turns 18, it'll have about $35,000. So that's what this is trying to tell us. So start early. these are some resources. If you're interested, I can you take a photo of this, or I could email it to you. But these are some resources: ISNA.net, IslamicScholarshipFund.org, FinAid.org, FastWeb.com, FAFSA is for the financial aid. And if you want, you can come up if it's not clear. If you want to take a photo, I'll let you. I saw you trying to zoom in, and I don't know what phone you have, but I need to come up a little. So these are good resources, and there's money out there, like scholarship money, right? And you just got to look for it. So Islamic Scholarship Fund's a good source, or .org is a good place to look for that. Okay, retirement. This is one that everyone's going to deal with. Inshallah, we all make it there. Sorry, I have to say that because just too many deaths happening in the community. Like last couple of weeks, I've been people in their 40s. Nearing retirement. So let me just get into this here. Okay, so when you think about retirement, how long do you have? Do you have 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, or more? What are you planning on doing? Are you planning on staying put, or are you going to move to Texas like everyone else does? Lifestyle, are you going to do more or less? Do you want to be active? Do you want to take more vacations? Do you want to slow down, or do you want to continue working? Okay. And then do you have enough? Who's coordinating all this? Are you making this a family decision, or are you just doing this by yourself? Do you have an advisor that you're consulting about your retirement? These are important things. So will I have enough money? Regardless of whatever your strategy is right now that you're saving for, most people will admit that they don't know how much money they'll need in retirement. At least 37% will say that. And then, will you have enough money, and which account are you going to take that money from? Depending on the accounts you have, your total accounts, where do you want to take it from? The 401k, the IRA, this account, that account. Do you want to sell your house? There's a lot of things that go into that, like where are you going to fund your retirement? Sources of income, personal savings and investments. I just mentioned pension plans, your Social Security and employment, or you're going to continue to work during retirement. So these are some of the sources of where this money can come from and the investment vehicles that you can have. The ones that are highlighted in the orange are like, the reason we highlight those are the ones that are not halal, right? The CDs are riba based, so are some annuities, fixed annuities are just like CDs, meaning in the sense that they pay an interest at fixed rate, so that can't be Islamic. That can't be halal revenue. And bonds, same idea, right? But all the other ones are acceptable by some scholar or another. Pension plans, so some companies offer that, some don't. It's a monthly stream that they give you after you retire, or you can take a lump sum distribution. So depending on how it's looking for you financially, either you might want to take that today or whenever you retire, or you want to have it drawn out. Okay? And then you need to create your own retirement income. You need to figure out that strategy of how you're going to pay yourself through retirement. The average Social Security check in 2021 is about $1,500. That's not going to cover your rent in New Jersey, right? So that's just a wake up call. You can check your benefits. Obviously, that was an average. Some might be more, some might be less. You can go to ssa.gov and enter your information, and it will give you. Sometimes you get a statement in the mail, and they give you like an estimate, like when you retire, this is what you're going to have. So it gives you a little insight into the future of what you can expect and how you need to plan. Okay. Employment during retirement, 79% said they intend to work. 29% say they'll work. They work after retiring, and then 48% retired earlier than planned. Hopefully, we can all do that with the newest coin, right? No. I keep joking about that, and don't ask me if it's halal. You could ask Imam Jawad. Saving for the long term.
The dodgy coin?
No, what's that new one? Shibu or So saving for the long term. So this also illustrates what I mentioned earlier about starting early. They're using a figure of 6,000 a year, assuming a 7% return, and that's a very conservative number. Given and then we'll get into more of the amount of funds, but you'll see that that number is a lot higher. I like to see, I'd like to use 10%. But just for the illustrative purposes here, if it was a 7% return and you're putting away 6,000 a year, if you started at the age of 25 and then your age of retirement 65, you'd have about $1.2 million. Okay, that's 6,000 a year, putting it at something that's earning you 7%. Now, you got something that's earning you 14% a year, like average. That would be obviously double. So same thing. Now, if I started when I was 35. And doing the same thing, 6,000 a year, then I would have $600,000, right? Now, let's say I started when I'm 45, I would have about 261,000. And so start early, it'll be better for you because the power of compounding, okay, is what helps you drive this. As you're making money over money, right? The awesome power of compounding. Okay? Less and longer, more and later. So that's really what happens. So if you put, if you started early, you started with 10,000, you have 112. It's showing, and then if you started later in life, you have to put 30,000 to kind of catch up to that number. All right, different kind of retirement accounts. How are we doing on time? Are we good? You just falling asleep yet? No. Okay, good. Traditional IRA. What's an IRA? Individual retirement account. This is a way you can put money away for your retirement, okay? It's one kind of account. Traditional, it allows you to put $6,000 in per year. The IRS allows you to put that, and then that gets invested. And if you're over 50, you could do a $1,000 catch-up. So technically, if you're over 50, you do up to $7,000. It's tax-free growth. So the money's just growing. You're not paying any taxes on it. The thing is, you don't want to touch this money until you turn at least 59 and a half. Why? Because the IRS will penalize you 10% for taking the money out prior to 59 and a half. And that's what they do to discourage you from taking out from your retirement. That goes for your 401k, that goes for any retirement vehicle. Simple administration, generally few expensive. It's self-directed, meaning you could pick what goes into that IRA, whatever stocks or mutual funds that are assigned. Roth Ira, you probably heard this one too, right? Roth IRA is a great way to save for retirement in the sense that if you're younger, I recommend this to a lot of folks that are starting out because they take the taxes up front. And so same limits, right? 6,000, 1,000. If you're over 50, you have to do that. The thing is, when you take the money out after it grows, there's no taxes on it. Whereas in the other one, you're going to pay taxes on the growth. The difference is you're paying taxes up front rather than later. Like the other one, you would pay as you take it out. This is, but this works out better because you're just paying on what you put in, right? And then whatever it grows, whatever that money, whatever it amounts to, it's going to come out tax-free later. Okay. Also, simple administration, few expenses. Also, you can put it into a halal investment. So these are two great ones. And I just another point, it's not mentioned here. You have income limits. So if you're making over, I believe it's 140,000 as a single, and the married number, don't quote me on it, is about, I think it's like about 200,000, like 190 or 200,000. If you're making more than that, you cannot put into a Roth IRA. Okay, but there's other strategies called the backdoor Roth that we can get into if someone's interested later. Employer plans, 401k, 403b, if you work for a hospital or a school or something, they use that, or if you work for the government, they're called 457s. They're established by the employer. These are benefits. They don't have to give this to you. This is something that the employer said, hey, you know what, this is part of your compensation package, a benefit package, And so they set some limits. They may say, hey, we're going to give you a match. How many of you heard of the match, right? So that's free money. Like if they're giving you that, you should definitely go into that, you know, and participate in the match at least. I tell folks, you know, they ask me how much should I put in. I said, well, what's the match? Oh, it's like 3%. Do at least 3% because you're giving money away. Who doesn't like free money, right? So the plan sponsor sets the investment choices. So now here's the issue that comes into play, and we get phone calls all day about this, right? Well, brother, they don't have halal options. What do we do? The one thing you could do, and especially if they're like Vanguard, Fidelity, some of the major Schwabs, they allow a self-directed brokerage option, okay? So what the thing you should do is contact your HR, your human resources, or whoever manages your 401k at your company, and ask them, do you offer a self-directed option? And they'll say, well, why do you ask? You don't have to give them a reason. And say, you know what, I want to invest more ethically, and you know, your funds here don't provide that. If you get a large enough group to voice their opinion, like you can make change in the company, and it's happened at very large companies. So what they'll do is they'll offer you a self-directed brokerage option within the 401k, and you could still get the match. Then you can purchase Amana mutual funds or whatever other halal investment is out there, because it provides you an open architecture. They may charge a small fee for it, but hey, it's still worth it rather than going into something that would be, you know, investing into a haram industry or something, right? The max you could put in a 401k is $19,500. That's the maximum for each year, right, when you do it. Similar tax benefits, it grows tax deferred. You only pay income tax when you make the withdrawal. Some have a Roth option, okay, what I mentioned earlier. So within a 401k, some of them offer a Roth option. Again, if they have that, that would be a great way to go, especially if you're young, just starting out. Simple IRA, how many business owners are here? Any business owners? Okay, so I'll kind of skip through this. But if you were, it's called a simple IRA. You can set that up if you're a business owner. And a SEP IRA, same thing. It's a self-employed pension. All right, so here's will you outlive your assets? You could spend 10, 20, 30 plus years in retirement. And then this gives you a probability of you know, how many years you're going to spend in retirement if you're a male. They have life expectancies of 85. I don't know if it's applicable to my family because my genes aren't that good. But this is just to talk about lifespan. Healthcare, Americans are concerned that, you know, we're running out of money and healthcare is not getting any better. It's just getting more costlier. So how much do you take out, you know, annually? So, you know, this is a survey they did, and it's a 10% mass affluent. That's how much they take out of their savings just to pay for healthcare, and then the affluent is at 7%. What mass affluent means is they have $100,000 to $250,000 in investable assets, and affluent means if you have over $250,000. So that's how much money is being used for healthcare. Healthcare costs, this is through retirement, not per year, okay? They're saying roughly it would be about $376,000, you know, or $295,000. A 65-year-old couple who retired in 2020 will need about $300,000 to cover healthcare costs in retirement, not per year. All right, so this is us here, Amana Mutual Funds. We've been around since 1980s, late 1980s. Our first fund, and how many of you are familiar with mutual funds? Let me just start with the basic. Do you understand what a mutual fund is? Okay, mutual fund is so think about a box, right? Let's say I draw a box. In there, that box is a fund, okay? And then what's going to be in that box? We're going to take stocks. halal stocks, screen stocks by, our Sharia advisors. So for instance, you heard of a company called Apple? So you got an iPhone, right? So that we own in our fund. So let's put Apple in that box. Johnson and Johnson, right? Pharmaceutical. Let's put that in the box. Can we put Anheuser-Busch in there? No. So we leave that one out. So what I'm getting at is we have about 50 companies like that in these boxes, right? So here I have 4 boxes. Each of these boxes represents a mutual fund. Each one has an objective, different objective, long-term, short-term, preservation of capital. So let me start off. The first fund that was born from within the Amana family was the Income Fund in 1986. You want to hear a quick story of how it happened? How we got here? 86. Okay. There's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Yaqub Mirza, who some of you may know or heard of, but he's very big in the Islamic finance space. He also sits on the board of UIF, so that's why Wissam knows him. So he lived in Indiana back in the 80s, and they had started a small investment club, right? They figured out the problem where to get the halal meat, right? Let's say, okay, so how do we make money with our money and make sure it's halal and we're earning it in a halal manner, right? So a bunch of the brothers in the masjid, they got together, they put their money, they pulled it together, and they came up with, the simple guidelines. Like obviously, we're not going to put it in Anheuser, we're not going to put it into JP Morgan or Wells Fargo, right? We're not going to put it into banks or any haram industries. So they did the best they could at the time. They created this pool and an investment club, and they were doing really good that more and more Muslims joined in. And it got so big that they couldn't manage that. So they walked down the street to a gentleman by the name of Nick Kaiser, who's a professional money manager. And they said, look, we have this money, we want to properly manage it or invest it. Can you help us? We have these guidelines. We're Muslim. We need to follow these guidelines. So they handed him the piece of paper with the guidelines on it. And he said, you know what? Let me see what I could do. I'll try to make it work. So he worked with the Muslims alongside to create a fund. And that's how Amana Income Fund. They filed registration in 1984. And then in 86, they went public with the Amana Income Fund. And so that was 86. So it was like, I would say there were pioneers in the Islamic investing space in the United States, especially. So then they were doing well with that. They wanted to create another fund. They created the Growth Fund, which is our most aggressive fund. And then after that came our developing world. That's our emerging markets. So that invests into the Middle East and Southeast Asia. And then the participation fund, the newest one, was our answer to halal bonds, right? So bonds are haram because of interest. But what the participation fund does, it uses sukuks. Sukuks are halal, like revenue bonds. They're based on partnership, profit, and loss. They're not fixed like the way bonds are, right? Because when you buy into a bond, it's a fixed amount. This, it varies based on profit or loss and how the companies or the underlying securities do. And these sukuks are instruments from also Middle East and Southeast Asia. And I do have some handouts on this one, so I can share that with you as well. So after we're done. So who governs or who's our oversight? Like who's saying this is halal? Who's, are you guys, self-proclaiming this stuff? No. We actually hired a third party based out of Malaysia. And Malaysia is huge in Islamic finance. They're one of the leaders, I would say, in Islamic finance. So Amani Advisors is a leading consultant out there, and they, on a quarterly basis, review all of our portfolios and our holdings. And they issue a certificate, and we upload that on our website every quarter. We also happen to have an office in Malaysia, too. So my boss, Munib Salam, who some of you may or may not know, went out there and ran that office for 7 years, and he moved back. So he's been with Saturna and Amana for over, I would say, about 20 years. And he's the guy that hired me. When he came back, he's like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm still here. All right. So what are some of the other screens that they're looking at? Okay, we already talked about the business sector. I'm not going to go through that again. But financial screening, right? They also look at how much the company is in debt. When you want to invest into a company, you want to make sure it's healthy. Like you don't want to invest into a company that's on its last leg. So we look at 33% less if it's the total debt. If it's less than 33%, and we look at the last 12-month trailing cap, then it's okay. Accounts receivable to total assets, 45%. What does that mean? Are you owed money? Is that company owed money? Are they like, they have a bunch of, accounts, there's a lot of money that's owed to that company from outside vendors or whatever. So we look at 45% as that, and then the last thing is 5% haram revenues. This gets tricky, but it is what it is. So what does that mean? How many of you think an airline is a halal company to invest into? What's their main business? Transportation. They're selling airfare. But what else are they doing? Beer. They're selling alcohol on the plane, right? You're sitting on the plane. Johnny next to you gives his credit card, and lady comes over, and you're like, "Oh, stuff for a lot," right? So this, why I bring this up is because that's an easy example. So what they will do is, now we don't have any airlines in our portfolio, but if we were to, this is something we would look at. We would call up investor relations and say, "Hello, United Airlines, how much of your revenue comes from alcohol sales on your airplanes?" They'll say, it's about generally 1%. Then scholars have deemed it to be acceptable because that's not their major revenue source, and they keep it under 5%. Now, we always get the opinion that, hey, why even 1%? It should be 0. Then we say, well, then you got to keep your money under the mattress because, unfortunately, any company you look at traded on the stock market, and I think they've looked into this, you'll probably find 1 or 2 that will have 0 haram activity. Because you also have interest income, right? That some companies get paid. You got to look at that too. So there's a lot of details. So what they've done is, and again, we work with the Sharia boards, FIC Council of America. There are other companies, or I would say Islamic fatwas that allow up to 10%. But we try to, here at Saturna, we try to minimize it, and we've stuck with the 5%, less than 5% rule. So just want to highlight that. This gets into more of our performance over the years. You can look at that in the in our book, but it shows you, like, if you were to invest $10,000 10 years ago, where you would be with our amount of income and our amount of growth. So the growth one is the one on the top. So had you put $10,000 in June of 2011 and did absolutely nothing, you woke up 10 years later and you would have $42,000. Okay. And the SPTR, the 39, that's the S&P 500 index, right? So the benchmark that we're using. Income fund, you have about 28,000. Why is that lower? It's because, again, it has a different purpose. The income fund invests into securities that are less riskier than the growth fund. And so naturally, that's why that would be like that. But and this gives I have this in the pamphlets I'll give you. So I'm not going to get too much into this. And then what I'll do is, and then if you have any questions, which funds can I invest or I need help investing in, we actually have a fund selector online on our website. So that can help you choose which funds. And that's really it. I'm pretty much done. This is more on food, so I'll take Q&A.
You guys invest in Forex and commodities?
No, we don't.
Repeat the question.
So the question was, do you invest into Forex or commodities? So our Amana income and growth, they're strictly large cap stocks, US large cap. the developing world or international stocks, and the, as I mentioned, the participation or sukuk. So none of those are. We are coming out with a real estate fund shortly. It's in the works. You heard it from me, but you know, but yeah, that's our next fund that's going to come out. But yeah, we don't have anything specifically like gold and stuff. Yeah, no.
Gold, oil.
Oil, yeah. Yeah, and that's also tricky too, crude oil and stuff. We're also, I forgot to mention this, but not only are we Sharia compliant, these funds, we're also ranked, when a financial advisor does a ranking of environmental sustainable, you've heard the term ESG, environmental sustainable governance, these three things, socially, SRIs, social responsible investing. These are, now they're like buzzwords, right? But we've been doing this for years. Morningstar is a third-party rating agency, and they rank our funds, obviously based on performance, but also now they have this sustainability rating. So the amount of growth happens to be a 5 out of 5 gold rated fund. So crude oil is an issue. We don't invest into that as well, because pollution and things like that. Fossil fuel. Right, so that's the other thing. So what percentage of non-Muslims are invested in our funds, do you think?
60.
Yeah. He's been to our presentation.
No, actually,
Yeah.
that was a guess.
It was a guess, yeah.
But
So,
I knew that, the products are good products.
Yeah. So he's right. It's generally like a 50-50, but it's more like recently it's more like a 60%. 60% non-Muslims are in the amount of funds, 40% Muslims. Why is that? It's not because they're looking for Sharia compliant. It's they're looking at investing responsibly. And so Amana covers that as well because of our principles, right? We just tend to fall into that. Think about it. Healthy companies, right? They're not too much in debt. We're dealing with good companies that do good for the environment, for people. When I mentioned the last part, governance, corporate governance, that's what we're talking about. Is there a fair board? Is there diversity? Is there, equal women and men on the board? Is it, those are things that covers. So that's become very important these days, especially amongst non-Muslims, right? I mean, so we just happen to fall into that category. And we have, about $6 billion under management now, $6 billion. So, does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Anyone else? I also want to, these are the disclosures. So invest with caution, talk to an advisor, myself, or whoever your trusted advisor is, and, invest with caution, read the prospectus carefully. And there obviously are fees involved with any investment. We're a no-load fund, meaning you don't pay anything up front, right? But every fund has an internal expense ratio. And again, in the handouts, you're going to have the full, I'll tell you how much and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
I have one more question. So, your comment about less than 5% haram.
Yep.
So, would that be also like, for instance, if there's a company like you mentioned, Apple or Johnson & Johnson, they would have some equity or they would have some liability for which they will be paying interest.
Wow.
Right? And in some cases, like I used to work for a company called ADP that they used to make a lot of money on float. Even though it's a services company, they they do payroll processing, but they get the money from one client, put that into a float for a couple of days, and then make money on that, and that's like one of their revenue stream.
Right. So that you're saying they make money out of like interest.
Right.
Okay. So I think so. The one thing they'll look at, and again, I'm not an analyst about ADP, so I wouldn't really know too much about. I know about ADP because I worked in banking, and the reps would come and bug me all the time to use them for payroll with my clients. So that's the extent. But so if I had to take a guess, so the primary business is they're selling payroll services. So that's their main thing. And of course, they would have to look at where the revenues are coming from. So now, if there is interest income being made, what percentage of their total revenue is that? Is that interest? So they would look at something like that. if that was a company in question that we're investing in. So, anything else, or I think what are we at? 9:35. Okay, is that right? I have my business card, so this information is on there, and I'm going to pass out some of our information, so you have that as a reference. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good night, and assalamu alaikum. Thanks for
Jazakallah khair.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much to both of you for coming, inshallah, taking time out.
Yes, the legs will go numb for sitting as well. Thank you so much.
I have a question.
Thank you.